As most of you know, I'm Steve Pinto and I run Wandsworth Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to welcome you to this business session for the Wandsworth Climate Summit 2020. From the Chamber's point of view, we were delighted to be asked to run a business session for the Climate Summit. The one thing that I got out of coming to the starting session on Monday, some of the fantastic presentations that come about, was that you only have to do small things to achieve really big. Collectively, we can do so much together. We'll be developing a green section on the website, and that's an opportunity for businesses to make a green commitment, to say what they're doing to help the environment. And we're working with Toby, one of our speakers, to develop some sort of green kite mark for Wandsworth, so that companies can display their green credentials. And we're also working with the Risk Dashboard, and this is a compliance tool where the businesses can actually map out all their processes and policies. But we're going to work on a green element, and we're working with Andrew at Wandsworth Council, Andrew Hagar, from the environmental team, to just develop a module that allows businesses to just map out their green processes and their green thoughts. So in little ways, I think, the Chamber can help companies to just focus in a little on how they're going to approach this issue. So I'd now like to ask Councillor Cllr Richard Jones from Wandsworth Council to unmute himself and make the Wandsworth Council introduction. Really, this has come about through their initiative. It's been really successful today, and Cllr's been on our business forums weekly. Cllr is he's a cabinet member on the council with responsibility for business, and we're delighted to have him make this opening. So Cllr, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. Quick check, can everyone see the slides I've just shared?
It's great, yeah.
That's great, thank you. And Steve, I'm glad to hear you're enjoying the new series of The Crown as well. If I can get some sort of Crown reference into these short remarks, then I definitely will try to. So thank you very much for letting me kick off this session. Really what I want to do in this presentation is sort of give the local background to the climate challenge, explain a bit about what Wandsworth Council is doing, and then talk about what the council can do to help support businesses in greening. So to begin with, climate change is of course a global challenge. I don't really think I need to spend very long talking about that. But I think not in spite of, but because it's a global challenge, actually, there are things that we can all do, both on a local level and on an individual level. And whether that's things like using less energy, getting our energy from carbon neutral sources, finding ways to travel more sustainably, being conscious of what we consume and what we purchase and the carbon impact of that, we can all contribute to tackling climate change. The quote on this slide is one of my favorite quotes from the climate change discourse. It's from a climate scientist called Catherine Hayhoe, and she says that the most important thing that you can do to fight climate change is to talk about it. And I really agree with Steve's suggestion that at the end of our presentations, we can have a discussion as a business community about the ways in which we can help tackle climate change. So this slide, I think, just sets out a bit of the local context. So the image on the left is quite a visual illustration of what the risks are to Wandsworth locally. So in Wandsworth, climate change increases the risk from surface water flooding as summer storms become more intense and winter storms become more prolonged, putting extra pressure on our sewer systems. There's also, of course, the urban heat island effect that's a real issue for our borough. This phenomenon can cause London to be up to 10 degrees warmer than neighbouring rural areas, and that's exacerbated by the steadily rising global temperatures. climate change also indirectly impacts prices for food, water, and domestic energy, and affects utilities and supply chains. There are risks from extreme weather events, as well as global security. And so it's not just a domestic security risk, but it's also a real inequality issue. We can see these risks as what we'd say in municipal and management speak as a risk multiplier. But there's a real risk that it exacerbates inequality because rising prices for food, water, and domestic energy would not be borne by every member of the community equally. I think that underlines the imperative to tackle climate change. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see a breakdown from the borough's emissions in 2018. And I think that really underlines what a joint effort it is. You see, Wandsworth Council accounts for 3% of the borough's emissions, and I'll outline in a moment what we're doing to tackle that. But relevantly for our discussion today, you can see that industry and commerce account for a quarter of our emissions. And of course, we're all residents. We take note of the fact that 34% of the emissions are caused by domestic gas and other fuels, 14% by domestic electricity, and 24% by transport. So we all have our part to play in this. So what are we doing as Wandsworth Council? Well, in July of last year, we declared a climate emergency along with other councils, and we committed at the same time to produce an action plan within 6 months. Our action plan was approved at the start of 2020, and at that time, although almost 300 councils had committed to declaring a climate emergency, we were one of only 35 councils to actually have developed and had approved an action plan. As part of our targets, we've committed to being carbon neutral as a council by 2030 and carbon zero by 2050. And that's a really ambitious target. To put it into context, the UK government nationally, which is seen as one of the most progressive governments in the world on this issue, are aiming to be carbon neutral by 2050. So our targets exceed the government's targets by 20 years. So it's not just about, as we like to say, getting our own house in order at the council, but it's also about supporting the borough and the borough's businesses to help reduce their emissions. At the end of the first lockdown this year, the council launched its recovery programme, which is called Smart Growth. And Smart Growth is basically a package of measures aiming to help us recover from the economic downturn that's been brought on by the pandemic, but in a way that is fair and equitable and green. And really, at the heart of our smart growth recovery are local businesses. And I like to think there are 3 reasons why local businesses are sort of pride of place in our recovery plan. The first is the reason that we've always known that local businesses add so much to the economic health of the borough, but also the vibrancy and the vitality of our borough. Secondly, there's a really sound environmental case for using local businesses. When residents walk to local shops, restaurants and cafes, they're traveling sustainably and helping the environment, but also when they purchase goods and services from local businesses, they are eliminating those air miles and those emissions that would be occasioned if they were, getting an order off the internet. And also it's good for the local economy. We know that when £1 is spent with a small or medium enterprise in Wandsworth, 63 pence of that stays in the local economy. Comparatively, when £1 is spent with a larger organisation, about 40 pence stays in the local economy. So this slide really is a case study that we've put together to illustrate the kind of ways in which the council really wants to support practical ways in which all sorts of businesses can help them reduce their emissions. So early this year, Wandsworth was one of the local authorities to successfully bid for funding from the Department of Transport for e-cargo bikes. And so far, 2 council teams have been using e-cargo bikes to great success, as well as several charities and local businesses. So the image you can see here on the slide, this is from the local gardening and handyperson company, Osman O'Connor and Co., who've been using the e-cargo bikes. Elsewhere in Putney, the Putney Business Improvement District, Positively Putney, are helping to reduce local air pollution and congestion using the e-cargo bike scheme for an innovative trade waste scheme for Putney businesses. And what they do there is they collect recycling and rubbish from retailers with the e-cargo bikes and take them to a storage space owned by the council. So that's one example in which we're looking to equip businesses with practical ways of reducing their emissions. And we're working with the businesses on an ongoing basis to see how the e-cargo bikes work for them, and what we can do to adapt it and make it better. This is my last slide, and this really just summarizes some of the things that we're doing to create an environment where climate change can happen. So as the council lead for businesses, I'm really proud of the businesses we have in Wandsworth that are leading the fight on climate change. So one example is our local company Retrofit Works. They've recently been announced as being part of the government's task force for the green economy. Of course, we'll get presentations today from Toby Costin from Cllr Energy and Steve True from Green Zone Cleaning and Support Services, who've put energy, green energy at the absolute heart of their businesses. As a council, we've secured Green Home Grant funding to insulate homes and make them more energy efficient, and we'll be bidding for more support to support the energy efficiency of homes. This funding will help stimulate local green jobs and the economy. And looking ahead actually to what the green economy is going to look like, one of the key aspects of that is making sure we have the skills required to deliver that. And we recognize that there's an increasing demand for green skills, and we want our residents to be able to benefit. We've had initial conversations with South Thames College, and we'll be building on this in the next 12 months, as this will be a key area of focus for next year's action plan. But of course, we recognize that this is a big, significant challenge. In many respects, actually, this is a sea change for our economic life and for our business life. And so there aren't any immediate solutions, and it's important to get this right. And I'll just conclude by saying that I'm sure, like many of us on the call today, I was delighted with the Prime Minister's announcement at the start of this week of a package of up to £12 billion to support the green economy, and a goal to have 2 million green jobs by 2030. Like the climate change challenge itself, we've all got a part to play in that. Wandsworth has tremendous innovation and business resilience, and I know that we will be at the forefront of developing and delivering those green jobs. And I'm really excited that the Chamber, the Council, and businesses can all work together to achieve that. So thank you very much. I'll now hand you over to...
Thank you for that. It's great to see that the Council's aim is to be carbon neutral by 2030. We'll do everything that we can to help you, and hopefully as the theme develops, we'll be able to work more closely with businesses on different working groups to look at different aspects of that. So our other speakers today are Toby Costin from Cllr Energy. And Toby is doing some fantastic work in the borough, working with the council, working on different projects, and I'll introduce, and Toby will just speak in a minute. And Steve True is from Green Zone Cleaning. This is a company that's been supporting the Chamber since we met about 8 years ago. And at that stage, I think there were 4 people, and then they grew to 800 within 4 years. Steve will be giving you an example of some of the things that they've been doing that have really helped them to grow and adopt sustainability as part of the culture of their company. So now we'd like to hear from Toby Costin. Love to hear what you've got to say. Over to you.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning, everybody. I'm from Cllr, and we're a community benefit society based in Wandsworth. We started trading in around 2017. And our primary focus is developing renewable energy, renewable heat and energy efficiency projects across London, but with a particular focus on Merton and Wandsworth, where we're all from. So we also have a second part of our business, which is running energy cafes. So there's a lot of fuel poverty across London. So I think in this borough, it's around about 9%. We've just launched a helpline because of COVID. We can't do our natural thing of having cafes in civic centres and things like that. So we've got this new helpline. So please look out for that. If anyone you know is in fuel poverty, you can find a number on our website. And we also do outreach events. So trying to make people more aware of climate action, what action they can take and what they can do. And we run that through a series of games. So things like giant snakes and ladders and higher and low and things like that. And it really gets people thinking. We've done that with children, we've done it with adults, and the feedback's generally really good. So for maybe slightly large organizations on the call, they might want to consider a session like that to get their staff and maybe some of their customers thinking about what you can do around climate change. So 5 steps to a greener business. I think probably the most easy thing you can do is to switch to a green tariff. And then what we would suggest is you need to know where you're starting. So have your building audited, then you can decide which measures will work for you, which won't. Then you'd look at, let's say, some of the smaller measures or slightly cheaper measures, things like energy efficiency measures. And we'll go through all of these in the presentation. Then look at slightly larger, more invasive options like solar PV and heat pumps. And then, of course, the motto of our time, I guess, reduce, reuse, recycle. And we've just launched a new page on our website around all this information. There's lots there for you to dig into and have a look around. So let's start with green tariffs and the audit. So the first thing to be aware of, that there are shades of green. So you'll hear terms like dark green, mid green, light green, and basically anyone can have a green tariff. You just need to buy something what they call REGOs, which is basically certificates that says someone else has produced some green energy, and then I'm buying their credits, and then I can sell this power. So that would be a light green tariff. A dark green tariff might be someone like Ecotricity, Good, or Octopus, who either build their own wind farms, build their own solar farms, and they're only selling the power that they generate. So they're actually building the pipeline as they're building their customer base. So be aware of that and make judgments. I mean, someone like Octopus, they're as cheap as, say, Shell Energy would be an example of a sort of green badge or a bit of greenwashing, where overnight when they took over from, I think it was First Utility they bought out, they went from being a non-green tariff to a green tariff. And all they did was buy a load of REGOs. So, you know, there's not a lot of effort in that. There's not a lot of business policy going on there. So I would always try and look to support the dark green tariffs, because they're the guys doing the real work. The other way of getting a cheaper green tariff is join a basket, join an energy pool via energy brokers. We work with a group called Utility Aid, who tend to be around about 95% third sector focused. They've got a good heart to them. If you need any advice on that, come to us and we can probably help you. The next bit is auditing, and it's really important to understand where you are and therefore what measures you will need to take to migrate up the curve towards Steve's idea of this gold, silver and bronze. And as he's already mentioned earlier, we're kind of working on that. We've been held back slightly by COVID and getting everyone all their exams through and those kind of things. But hopefully come the new year, we'll have everyone in place. So we've got a non-domestic energy assessor, and that's Peter, and he's on the call today, so he'll answer any questions that people might have. And we've got 2 retrofit assessors as well. So we've got the skill sets in-house. And just on that skills and training bit that Alib was talking about, we've just got some funding via the Wandsworth Local Fund to train up 2 local people to become domestic energy assessors and retrofit assessors. So we'll be looking to interview people for those 2 roles coming up in the next few weeks, hopefully. So whenever you talk to a retrofit assessor or someone like Retrofit Works, they'll always say fabric first. You've got to do the fabric first. And what they're really talking about there is insulation. The issue being that insulation comes at very different rates. So something like loft insulation is relatively cheap. If we think about a home, you know, it could be a couple £100. And the current regulations are 275 mil of insulation is what's required. Then things like floor insulation, so you kind of either spray foam under the boards or lift up the floorboards and put down fiber insulation. That's a little bit cheaper, a little bit more expensive, but still manageable. If you're lucky enough to have a cavity, that's a relatively cheap way of insulating your walls. Then come windows and doors. And then the big one is really exterior wall. And if we just think about a house, because it's easier for us all to imagine, and everyone's businesses are different sizes, but even a terrace house could cost 6,000 to 8,000. You know, a detached house could be 14,000, 15,000. So your paybacks on these things are incredibly slow. So what we really need for the bigger insulation measures is a central government approach, wide. You know, we're going to have to tackle fabric. There's many benefits of tackling fabric from the consumer, be that business or domestic, but also for the national grid, for the DNOs, in terms of not having to upgrade so much because demand will fall if we insulate people's homes. So fabric first, if you can, and if it's affordable, I guess is probably the measures. Then we start looking at how you can control your heating. And if you're a slightly bigger business, you might look at something called a building management system. And what this will do is it allow you to zone your heating. So you might have, I don't know, a factory where there's some offices and there's a large factory floor. Now the offices might only be used 9 till 5, but the plant runs maybe 16 hours a day. So you can actually zone these different areas and say, right, I only need that heat and come on the offices at say 8:30. These systems have algorithms. They'll learn the heat loss of your building. You'll have temperature probe inside and outside your building. So it's a really cold day. It knows it's going to take longer to get to that temperature. And slowly but surely over a few weeks, these building management systems start to learn your building and how it works. And then you'll basically control the system through a booking system. And if you've got lots of rooms, if you look at a civic centre, there's a really good example. You know, some rooms are rented every day, other are only rented twice a week, and you can control and zone all these spaces. This technology that we work with is called Heating Save by Tensor, and it's the only one that's on the energy technology list. And because it's on that, you're entitled to capital allowance tax breaks, which means you basically can offset it against 1 year of profits. So kind of self-financing there. And for us, I mean, we've looked at different projects, and they've been anywhere between 2,500 for a small civic centre up to 50,000 for a hotel complex. So it really depends on the size of your business and what you're doing. But paybacks tend to be pretty quick. We've seen examples of civic centres where there's been 43% savings in a year. So your payback's going to be, what, 3 years maximum. So in that scenario, the energy saving trust suggests that a typical saving will be around about 25%. If you're in a slightly smaller space, then you'd look at the next two measures, really. Smart thermostats. So, you know, what's the point of heating a building if you're not there? You might be stuck in a meeting and you think, well, actually, I'm going to be here for a few hours. I don't need heating on. You can control it remotely from your phone, turn the thermostat down, and then, you know, it will learn when it needs to heat up again to get back to, say, 20, 21 degrees that you need for when you get back to the office. Smart TRVs are a sort of basic way of controlling what a BMS does. It will allow you to zone areas. So if you think a good example would be at home, your bedrooms, and particularly that spare bedroom that's never used, you're heating that with the rest of the house. You don't need to. You know, that could have its door shut, have it down to maybe 16, 17 degrees. Don't heat that room most of the time. And similar things will happen in office buildings or in factory buildings where there's certain parts of the building that aren't really used very often. These kind of controls will help you save that kind of money. So we're probably looking at about 15% on those, 10% maybe on a smart thermostat. The thing about all of these technologies, they're only as good as the people using them. So if you don't program them, if you don't use them, of course they won't save you money. So renewable options. We're looking at renewable heat, and the huge thing now is around renewable heat. We've seen the Green Homes Grant, and that's very renewable heat driven. So it's either got to be fabric or it's got to be renewable heat before you can do other measures. And the government has a big drive. And we heard in that 10-step plan, they want to have 600,000 homes a year over the next, I think it's 6 or 7 or 8 years, switching to renewable heat. But business can do this too. And we're getting to the point where heat pumps are getting ever more efficient. So we're seeing ranges, say 325 up to about 440 for really smart ground source solutions. And what that means is for every kilowatt of heat, of electricity you're taking from the grid, you're getting 4.4 kilowatts of heat out. So that means that you can compete with gas. The other things to think about when you're looking at this is, one, there's a subsidy, but only to March 2021 for businesses, March 2022 for domestics. So, but you can pre-qualify your project. So you just got to go and say, yes, look, here's our business, here's our plan, here's our funding idea for it. And then you've got, I think, till March 2022 to actually get those installations in place. So plenty of time to do the installs. But if you do want to start thinking about switching to renewable heat, contact us or contact a local provider, and we can start giving you some advice on what the steps are to get there before this subsidy goes away. And what this subsidy does at the moment, it gives you 2.79 pence for every kilowatt hour of heat you produce for the next 20 years. And that's what helps you fund the system. You'll also have funding savings out of the fact that you've not going to maintain a gas central heating system, which can be expensive, and you've got to have annual safety checks, and you're paying a standing charge for gas. All of that can go away. You're just on an electricity tariff at this point. Being a bigger electricity user will mean that you probably get on a better tariff. You'll be jumping into a different sector and therefore getting lower rates. But the flip is heat pumps run at lower temperatures. So we're used to running our boilers at 70, 75 degrees. Condensing boilers are only meant to be run at 60 odd, so they're not actually condensing most of us because we've just got in a bad habit. Heat pumps run at 50. So what that might mean is you'll need slightly larger radiators, slightly longer running profiles, improve your insulation, like maybe secondary glazing, some loft insulation, to get those, to be able to manage that lower running temperature. But once you make that change, it's pretty straightforward, and people who have heat pumps really like the heat that it produces. It can also produce all your hot water needs as well. So you've got a dual system there. And the things we're looking at the moment, we've got funding from Power to Change's Next Generation Fund, develop the next generation of community models, and ours focuses on heat. And what we're looking at there is things like demand shifting. So by storing water in huge, great buffer tanks, we can shift, say, 3 hours of heat out of peak, and therefore reduce your risk of paying peak pricing. And that allows you to do things like time of use tariffs. So you pay when you use your energy at cheapest periods. So you might store heat overnight, then release it at 4 till 7 in the evening. Those kind of measures. And then the second technology that's open to us, and wind isn't open in a city centre. We just don't get the airflow. So really the only form of renewable generation is solar PV. Now there's no subsidies anymore, but the good thing is prices have been coming down and down and down. And it's really all about on-site consumption. If you can use all of the electricity that you put on your roof, or you can share it with a neighbour, is another option if you've got a big roof, like the one in the picture there, you will be able to get a decent return, because what you're doing is saying, right, I'm not paying 14, 15, 16p for my electricity anymore. I'm making this investment, and that investment is the 16p back into the system. And that's how you offset it and work out how much you're earning. The other good thing about solar PV is that once you're into a system, you know what you're paying, and you know what your financial modelling is. So you haven't got that unknown, well, is my electricity bill going to go up 2.5% this year? Is it going to go up 12.5% as we've seen in recent years? It gives you a bit of more of a forecasting factor of, what's going on. You can look at combining with battery storage, and then you've got things like time of use tariffs. So again, shifting out of peak periods is expensive. Consuming in periods that are less expensive. Lots of options there. The other thing you can consider, if you have a large enough roof, and typically that's sort of 30 kilowatts of space, third-party funders will come in and they will fund the system for you. They'll own and operate it. You don't have to do anything. And the power purchase agreement they offer you will be at a discount to what you're paying now. So you might be paying 14p. They might offer you 10, 11, 12p for the power. You buy all that power from them and they run the system. Now, again, that takes you into a CPI indexation rather than an energy indexation. And what we know over the last 15 years is that CPI has been around about 2.5%. Energy inflation has been 7.5%. So decoupling from energy inflation is really a good thing to do. And we're going to see more inflation because the grid needs upgrading. The DNOs will be spending lots of money. National Grid needs to spend lots of money. The whole grid needs to get smarter. So those costs, not the wholesale power costs, but the other costs are going to constantly increase. So when I started trading power in 2002, I think it was, 65% of the cost of the electricity we consume was the wholesale power price. Now 65% is non-wholesale. It's all the other bits that we're paying for. So hopping out of that into a CPI-based thing is a good thing. So they're the renewable options. LED lighting is another energy efficiency measure, and it's the most basic, simple one I think you can do. If particularly if you've got a standard screw-in or bayonet type bulb, which we call golf ball bulbs. I've just given an example here. You know, an old filament bulb would be 50 watts. LED one's only 6 watts. If your lights are on 50 hours a week, fairly reasonable guess, I guess, of a business. If you're open, say 5-6 days a week, that bulb will save you £17, one bulb, and that bulb will probably cost you £2. So, you know, if you don't have LED bulbs, you should just do it. It just saves money. Look at strip lighting. So we're talking about 5-foot T8 tube there, 58 watts down to 21 watts. So that will cost you, save you £14. Now something like that is probably going to cost you £15 plus the tubes, maybe £20 all in for the kit, and then you've got an electrician to put these units in. But it's not a lot. So you're only looking at probably a 2-year payback-ish, maybe a 3-year payback to cover that. The other thing about LEDs is they last an incredibly long while. So a T8 tube of a traditional style will last 5,000 hours. LEDs last 30,000 hours. Your typical golf ball bulb lasts about 1,000 hours. So if we look at something like your golf ball on 50 hours, that means that golf ball would last 12 years for that £2 investment. So, you know, you're going to be saving, what's that, 170, 300 and something pounds from one £2 investment. These things make huge sense. The other thing is they're much more robust because they're made of plastic. They don't have a filament. They don't break. You drop them, you pick them up, they're fine. So, you know, that's another factor. If you've got a store cupboard and anything's tight in space, and you're pulling something out, bulbs fall on the floor, it's not going to be an issue for you. The reduce, reuse, recycle. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just because I've probably taken too much time already, but just check our website out. There's lots of good tips on there of what you can do, lots of places you can go where you can recycle stuff, lots of support you can get, and we'll be developing this. It's just launched, but there'll be more and more content on there over the next weeks and months, really. Thank you for your time, and if you've got any questions, I'll be there at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Toby. Great presentation. I think one of the reasons that I love doing what I do at the Chamber and having these types of events and having expert speakers come on is that you learn things. You know, you just don't know what you don't know. And certainly there was a light bulb moment for me there. You think about light bulbs, a 50-watt light bulb. I don't know anyone who's got a 50-watt light bulb. You know, at least it's 150 watt or 100 watt, and just to change one light bulb when you think companies have probably hundreds could make a significant difference. And that goes back to, you know, it's the little things that can make a big difference. And if we all do it, it'll make a huge difference. So thank you very much.
Just on that as an example, so we changed all lights as our first project, the Dodgington Rollo Community Station up on Battersea Park Road. And I think that was 580 5-foot T8 tubes. And we got an interest-free loan from the BA Community Fund to do this. They borrowed the money over 10 years. They pay us back. It's generating £500 of savings per month for them. They've had to put nothing up front on that, you know. So, but it also shows you building that size, how many lights there might be, and therefore what the savings can be.
Absolutely, and probably we don't advertise this enough, but I'm sure we'll come on to that on the second part of this session, which is the open forum. So now I'd like to ask Steve True from Green Zone Cleaning and Support Solutions to unmute himself and give us a presentation. Green Zone is one of the many of my favorite companies in Wandsworth. They've done a fantastic job, have a great company ethos. And I just remember, you know, on one occasion, Steve phoned me up and asked me about, do I know companies for company that could provide company benefits for employees? And I thought, what a great idea. And the next I heard, he'd taken all of his managers over to Ireland for a team building session that was absolutely fantastic. Wish I'd got the invite. But Steve, with that, over to you.
Thank you. Can I just make sure you can see my shared screen?
Yes, it's fine.
You can. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. My presentation is going to be slightly different. I'm not a politician and I'm not an expert like Toby. I am a tree hugger, a bit of a hippie, and I just have a passion. And so what I'm going to do is try and talk you through our story, not in a context of telling you how to do it or what you should do, but just as a reflection on what we've done. And hopefully that might reminisce to somebody might think there's some good things there. So this is very much, this is our journey and this is what we've done. We're a commercial cleaning company. It's not particularly sexy, but it's a great business that we're involved in. We were set up in 2009, and I set the company up with my wife and a couple of colleagues. And the idea was that we wanted to have a company with a purpose. We wanted to do some good. We wanted to make profit because there would be no point in running a business if you weren't profitable. But we knew that profit would come out of our purpose. If we could share a purpose with our clients and our colleagues, and we were successful, then profit would come. But profit wasn't designed to be the be all and end all of our company. And that's how we started the business. So sustainable, we talk about greening, and we say that it is in our DNA. It's what we're, sorry, I'm struggling to, how do I start my slideshow? Here we are. So sustainability is what we consider greening. It's not just for us, it's not just about power, it's not about, it's about our people and our environment. So we talk about our one planet living and what we do as we deliver clean offices to our buildings. One of the major aspects is our staff, and Steve's referred to what we do with our people, that we try and ensure that they're as happy as they possibly can be as they work with us, because no business is going to be successful without happy staff. And another element of our greening, our sustainable, is innovation. That in a very highly competitive industry such as ours, because there are very low barriers to entry to be a cleaning contractor, is we have to constantly innovate. So we're always looking at the next best thing to start, and we're looking at technology, and we're looking at new ways of delivering our service. And we're looking to make sure our back of house processes are as clean, as environmentally friendly and focused as we possibly can. So essentially 4 aspects to the business, making our journey sustainable as possible. Here's a bit of a, oops, I'm sorry, I'm giving you all the information here in one go. Sorry, in one slide, here's our journey over the last 10 years. 2009, we registered, we went to the Better Building Partnership, looking to the major landlords of what they were looking for a cleaning contractor. And we started our journey. We went to Prius, and at the time, the Prius cars were as environmentally friendly as possible. We've got our fleet of battery operated cars. And we looked for a manufacturer of a cleaning agent that we could use. And we decided to go with Delphis Eco, another Battersea company who produce plant-based cleaning agents. And we've used them exclusively on our journey over the last 10 years. And we sought as many independent green auditing processes as we possibly could. So we went for the Lord Mayor of London's Green Achiever Award in 2011. And we also looked at the little unit there that's underneath that in 2011, was an ironator. So we're using water with an electrical charge to carry out our cleaning. In 2012, we signed up with the Planet Mark to register our carbon footprint, to measure the footprint, and we confirmed that we would commit ourselves to at least a 5% reduction per employee per annum on our carbon footprint. And every year they come and accredit us and measure us. We measure our carbon footprint, and we're committed to reducing it by 5%. 2012 was also when we signed up with the Wandsworth Chamber. We came and spoke to Steve and said, we'd like to be involved and see what we can do. We looked at our waste that was produced from our own offices and from the offices that we clean. And we made a commitment to have a zero to landfill, so that any waste that we know is collected from our offices premises, none of it goes to landfill. We signed up to Investors in People, who came and audited us and made sure that our people were engaged and understood the purpose of the company in 2013. And then we signed up with the second cleaning contractor to sign up for the Living Wage Foundation. So we pay our staff, wherever possible, the national living wage. We went for various awards. We went for, in 2014, we were delighted to win the Wandsworth Chamber Award for the Best Green Company. So our story has started a long time ago. And we support a number of charities. In 2015, we signed up for Trees for Cities. So we plant over 1,000 trees each year with local charities to try and make our offices and our city as green as possible. We actually sell over £1 million worth of toilet paper to our clients each year. We were very concerned to make sure that the products we were selling were as environmentally friendly as possible. So we've done a lot of work with Metsä, who are a Finnish paper manufacturer, and looked at their story and make sure their provenance of the toilet paper we're supplying our customers is as green as possible. The last in 2015 there is the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. And this is one of the things we do that we're particularly proud of. We've signed up for the library, and it means that every month, anybody who works for the company, that's our cleaning staff throughout the country, who has a child under the age of 5, gets an age-appropriate reading book, which comes with a little stamp on it from me to say, and it's to their children, I hope you enjoy reading this. So we're trying to encourage the children of our staff to read, and often they live in very poor environments. They don't really have access to reading material, so we're trying to support them. We looked at our gender pay gap in 2016, and we signed up for Prince Charles's business in the community to further our charitable donations and do more for the environment. In 2017, we signed up for the Green Apple Awards, and we were thrilled to be honoured with an Apple Award for the sustainable work we were doing with our cleaning in some of our city offices. And also I was personally honoured. We were awarded a Royal Warrant because of the work we're doing with Prince Charles. We cleaned Clarence House in Kensington Palace, and the Prince he's been very generous to us and supported us a lot. And we signed up to work with Cllr, which is a charity that helps protect rainforest. So we have the stewardship of 85 acres of prime rainforest in Peru. And what we've done there, the money has been used to help the local economy avoid deforestation, and has given them another means of making a living. So in our case, they grow cocoa. The cocoa is brought back to Cornwall and turned into chocolate, which we then donate back to the offices that we're cleaning, so they can see a nice closed circle of goodness. And then on top of that, we've got all the normal ISO standards you expect people. 2020, I was just saying to Steve earlier on, we were about to announce a £20 million turnover company in 2020, and then COVID came along. So we're not quite there yet, but we will be there. We have a map to go. But one of the things I'm particularly proud of, in 2018, we looked at our entire fleet of vehicles in London, and we've changed them all out. All our diesel cars have gone, and we're now entirely electric. So any of the green zone vehicles you see around town, and there's over 30 of them now, are all electric in London, which we're very proud of. We have chargers in our head office, so when our colleagues are out and about and they need to come back in, they can charge up while they're visiting the head office. And there's some more technology there, which are the ionator. We're using water, which has ozone pumped through it, and now has sterilizations which are comparable to bleach. So we've taken out harmful chemicals from all our processes, and now we're largely cleaning with water, although we still do use Delphis Eco where we need to. So in a single slide, there's a bit of our journey and how we've come along, and we've looked at, and it's interesting listening about LED lights. That was one of the first things we did in our head office to help reduce our carbon footprint, was to change all our light bulbs to LED, and that's helped us reduce our impact each year. So I'm not as slick as, so we're looking at our staff is what we do to make sure we're as friendly as possible. And Steve's talked about some of the things we do. Our staff are the life and soul of our company. Without them, we would be nothing. And we make a big thing of using social media to promote what we're doing and to reward our staff. So you'll see a picture taken there in Battersea Park of one of our teams who did particularly well. You see our vehicles there are signed up as best we can, and point out that they're electric. And we look at our staff and try and reward them for going over and above as best we can. We have a monthly Star of the Month award. We have a number of them, and we always recognise people who go the extra effort. So we have people who are really happy working for the company. These are some of the initiatives that we've done in the past to try and add value to our local economy. So we've gone into various parks, working with Wandsworth to do litter picks. We have English language lessons paid for at the head office every Tuesday. We encourage anybody who wants to develop their English language skills to come in, and the teachers paid for there. And in the middle, not in education, employment and training, is a story to tie back to Steve again. I know Paul is sitting on the call. One evening, Paul and I attended a function run by Wandsworth at Battersea Power Station, and we were introduced to some people, some young people, who had gone through the care system at Wandsworth. And when they reached 18, we were presented and told about how their life had changed, and suddenly they left on their own. And I know Paul and I sat together that evening, and we both felt particularly uncomfortable as local employers listening to the plight of these people. And I took it a stage further, and I went and got involved and put my hand up and said, what can we do? And I was introduced to a young lady, and she's there celebrating her 2nd year now of working with us. So we went along and we took a lady who was gone through the care system, didn't really understand about business, about jobs, what she had to do. And we opened our arms, said, come and work with us. And she recently celebrated her 2nd year with us. So we're very proud of her. And we've also looked at developing our staff. There are just pictures of 5 of my colleagues here. And these are people that have started with us with fairly low-level jobs, and we've developed them through. So bottom left, Steve knows Sally. She's not a relation, but she shares the same surname as Steve. Sally joined us as a temporary receptionist, and she was a single mother, and she was struggling with working out time and life balance, and we worked through with her, and we realized that she had massive potential. And Sally has blossomed with us in the 6 years she's been with us, and she's now head of our sales. She loves the company. She knows what we're all about. Hoden there lived in some fairly poor accommodation. She got housed by Wandsworth, and they changed her to a flat, but it wasn't particularly nice. So we went in and we spent a week tidying and painting and making sure her house was as nice as we possibly could. And we've always tried to look at our staff and develop them as best we can. Some of our charitable work, there's me living in a cardboard box for a night, sleeping out to raise some money. We always have our Christmas jumper. I don't know how we're going to do it this year. It's going to be a remote Christmas jumper day. Work again with Trees for Cities in the bottom left. There's Dan, one of my fellow directors, and his family went out planting trees. We recently spoke to Age UK, and we've done a deep clean at one of their centres to try and help them and look after. They're looking after the people around them, and we've made sure that it's clean and COVID safe. One of our clients has introduced a system that they've got food banks in their offices so that the tenants can bring food and donate food. And once a month, we send one of our vans around with a couple of drivers, and we collect the food and then deliver it to a food bank. So it's going back into the local economy. So we're constantly looking at ways that the Green Zone can add back to our local economy. And we see this as a holistic sustainability rather than just looking at carbon or that type of thing. And we play hard. We work very hard. We play hard. Through our connection with the Planet Mark, we're entitled to tickets for the Eden Project each year. This was last year when Dan and I took about 20 of the office people down to the Eden Project, and we spent a weekend there going to lectures and understanding the work they're doing in sustainability and just general education. And then one of our trips every other year, we take everybody away actually to the Isle of Wight, and we take all our head office staff, their partners and their children. And the company literally pay for everything from Friday morning when we leave the office until we bring them back on Sunday afternoon. And we pay for the whole weekend, and it's once every 2 years. And we think it's a great way of giving back and encouraging people to think about the Green Zone family. The last 2 years, we've looked at how social value has become more and more important as a measure of environmental sustainability. And the Planet Mark have developed a system that you can now actually measure your social value. So this is our 2nd year of being measured in 2019, and we have an audited value of £1.7 million worth of good going back into Wandsworth from us being a local employer. And that's looking at employing local people, our procurement from local suppliers, and our charitable donations. It's been a real challenge this year with COVID to try and maintain that. We had lots of plans for giving days and other ideas that were all due to be launched. Our figures for 2020 won't be as good, but we will find a way of 21 to bounce back and make sure this is achieved again. So sustainability for us is really important because it adds value. Over the last 3 years, our average audit score of all our clients is 96.2%. And we have a staff retention rate of 98%, which means we're not constantly retraining people, not looking to go the expense of recruiting people. We have people who want to work for the company, and once we've got them, they stay. So there is a very much an economic value to sustainability as we see it. And I've just on my final slide, I've gone on for too long. These are the type of buildings that we're cleaning. We're a small one. We started being a small Wandsworth company, as Steve said. There were 4 of us around my kitchen table with an idea, and we're now cleaning incredible buildings in the City of London. Perhaps most pertinently, the one on the bottom left there, largely through connections with Steve, who introduced us to Wandsworth. And for the last 2 years, we have cleaned phase 1 of Wandsworth Battersea Power Station. As a local employer, you probably see my office from that picture. We're about 400 yards away from the power station. We currently have about 30 staff there. Our submission for phase 1 and phase 2 to the power station is being delivered by 12 o'clock today. And the contract value will go from just about £500,000 to over £3 million, without giving too much sensitive information out there. But it's a massive opportunity for us as a small, local, dedicated company to work with one of the super powerhouses of the areas, and we're delighted. So, as I said at the beginning, this isn't a how-to. This is an example of what we've done. And I say I'm no expert. I don't claim to know how to do everything, but these are the measures that we've done to try and develop a sustainable local company. Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. A company, sustainability right at the heart of everything they do. And I love the whole story about Greenzoning being a family business. It comes through very clearly. I am recording this, Steve, so I'm going to give you that recording so that you can put it in all your proposals. And I wish you the very best of luck with securing another engagement at Battersea Power Station, another of the great companies in Wandsworth. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions around those presentations. And one that kind of comes to me is around time. How does a company build in time? I know there's a huge payback, but a lot of smaller businesses, I guess, they're out there at the coalface doing 101 jobs. And until you get to a stage where you have got a team around you, how do you make the time to develop that sustainable strategy? But I'm sure we'll come to that as we go through. At the moment, open to questions. I'm just looking at that. If you'd like to ask a question, just hit the raise your hand button and I'll come to you. And then we'll go through some of the questions in the chat box as well. The first one is for Toby. Working from home will push our heating bills significantly this winter. Is a heat pump a feasible option for London House? And would working from home enable us to look for grants to install this? Toby?
Yes, I mean, much of it depends on your home and the insulation levels that you have. But if you're running your gas boiler, you can run a heat pump at a relatively similar running cost. So you can, in terms of funding it, the big thing at the moment is the Green Homes Grant. So you're getting £5,000 as Green Homes Grant funding as an upfront, and then thereafterwards you can claim the balance of the RHI. So if, for instance, you had 20,000 kilowatt hours of deemed demand, you'd get £12,000 from the RHI. If you take that Green Homes Grant, you get 5,000 now. They'll give you an additional 7,000 from RHI. So that can pretty much cover the cost of the installation of a heat pump, depending on the size of your house and those kind of issues. So yeah, it's definitely a viable option.
Brilliant. David, that was your question. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm a bit of a penguin in the winter. I don't mind the cold, but my wife now working from home. She has an office in Victoria, but she's going to be working from home, and she's like well, they used to call her the Bantam lizard. But she has the heating on all day, and I daren't look at the bill, but it's just something we've talked about, and But that's great, Toby. So we'll definitely look into that. And just
Yeah,
I just want to say I'm quite humbled by Steve True of what Green Zone do. There's some amazing things going on there. That's fantastic.
I thought we all were. I was gonna. My first question is, can I join?
Thank you, David. I'm humbled. Let's say it's a passion, and I think if you have a passion and you hold that passion, everything else comes. You can build around it. So yeah, thank you. I'm honoured that you said that.
Yeah, Harvey, can I ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, hi. Excellent presentations, guys. My question is, as a business, as a print business, we've tried to be as green as possible. All of the paper stocks we use are recycled to an extent. They're all sourced from FSB sources that are sustainable forests. But when it comes to actual 100% recycled, it's just too expensive at the moment, and we struggle to sell it to clients. So does anybody have any suggestions how I sell this and how it can be achieved?
Trish, you want to answer that question? Just unmute yourself.
Right, yeah. Thank you. Harvey, I don't know who you use at the moment for your supplies, but I know the biggest in the country is Antalis. Have you got an account with Antalis?
Yeah, we've got accounts with Antalis and all of the paper merchants.
Speak to your paper merchant rep. Also, with your customers, you need to do an audit. So you need to look at what they're paying now and look at what that you can do for them. I've done it so many times, the audits, and showed at least 10% of savings. It can be achieved.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other part of it, Harvey, is that you will find people that will want to trade in recycled stuff. So just adding that to your marketing would be a huge boost. Toby, yes.
And I would just say it's about messaging as well, Harvey. If you can say to them, this is how much carbon you're offsetting by choosing the slightly more expensive option, we need people start thinking about that and actually having to make those choices. So I think a lot of it's about messaging. We've got a really good comms team. I'm happy to put you in touch with them, and they can probably assist you on sort of measuring the carbon differences between full recycled paper and what you're using, and how best to message that to your customers.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Brilliant, lovely. Julian, you've got your hand raised. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name's Julian Jackson. I'm a writer on technology, and I'm particularly interested in renewable energy and green technology. I'd like to thank Steve and his guest speakers for all the interesting presentations. So actually, what I'm doing under lockdown is greening and insulating my flat, which is an ancient solid wall 1930s design. But I've been putting internal insulation on that's the only way it's possible to do it. So I'm kind of not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. But what I wanted to, let's face it, that climate catastrophe is the biggest challenge we're going to be facing, and we've got to do whatever we can. So I'm just going to point up a couple of areas. I really think that improving our building stock is where we need to look at. It goes under the radar, but essentially if you can improve, because our building stock is old, when it was designed nobody ever thought most of it isn't green, but that's one of the big areas. And also that, quite frankly, if we had a national or local project for that, we'd be producing a lot of jobs, because it would be very a great deal of work involved in that. So that's something that's very important. But also local food growing. There's the famous example of Cuba when the Soviet will, you know, when the Soviet Union stopped subsidizing its food, that actually the Cubans went and started growing their food in urban environments. And although Cuba is very different to the UK, it's actually quite possible to grow quite a lot of food in urban environments. So I think we should, you know, we should look at every little aspect of things that we can do. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. Lovely to see you there. Sarah Banham, lovely. Hello, Sarah.
Hi there. Thanks everybody for those presentations. They were brilliant. It was great. I was just responding, Steve, to what you said about time and businesses finding the time to do these things. And also at the very beginning about how people can connect and just do really, really small things. And I was on a call on Monday along with Green the Grid. And then I had a call yesterday from one of our contractors who said, oh, do you know anyone who wants some plants? We're about to widen a pavement, so we've got to get rid of a flower bed. And because of that, I was able to contact Nina, and she's coming down today to get those plants. And it's about those connections and tiny things. And if we could have some form of platform, either through the council or through the chamber, where we can all link and just post opportunities or ideas and sort of replicate those models. I think, and again, it's just doing those really small things, but then they grow and people take each other's ideas. So I'm just throwing that in there. More work for you, Steve.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Sarah. And it's you know, it's one of the questions that I've kind of got down is, you know, how can companies use the power of the information they're learning to perhaps ask for referrals from other companies that they interact with, and maybe give referrals to people like Toby, who can do a green audit of the company. So have that in the conversation. I think one of the first things that Aled said was one of the most important things is to talk about climate. So why not bring that into your conversations when you're talking to your customers and your suppliers? You know, how can we get a green supply chain? And possibly one of the best ways is to mention it and just see what comes out of the conversation. Yeah, absolutely great idea. We have a question from Paul Mitchell. Paul, can I ask you to unmute yourself?
Morning, Steve.
Hello, Paul.
So before I ask my question, I just want to say, Steve True, inspiration, wonderful story of Green Zone. We can learn so much from you. Thank you. My question is to Toby, and it's to do with what should we do if we have a stock of energy inefficient items or material. And I use the example in my question of halogen light bulbs, say in the office or at home. We have a stock of these with the intention of using over time as the existing stuff gives up. Should we junk that stock now and replace everything with LEDs, knowing that the LEDs are a better, longer term solution? And the same logic would apply to, say, a car. So my car has got life left in it, but it's not electric, it's not particularly green. Should I junk it now and buy a new electric one, which will require resources, energy to manufacture, to distribute, and the whole? What's the way ahead, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's a tough one, isn't it? Because of that whole life cycle, and what we tend to look at is running cycles of things. So, you know, my presentation about running cycles. But what we would say is move forward with the technology. So put those LEDs in, recycle correctly. You know, under that, if you look up WEEE, you'll be able to find people who will recycle those halogen bulbs in the correct fashion. Take all the components out and recycle them, you know, deal with any of the toxic gases that might be involved in various forms of light, and they'll manage that in the most environmental way possible. the thing that we need to do is to try and get the grid to a point where it's super green. And one way we can do that is by reducing the amount of energy we use, because every time that we turn on a halogen light at peak period, we're also turning on a coal-fired power station in really extreme periods, or diesel gensets in extreme periods, and massively intensifying the carbon on the grid. So if you look at, say, peak period, you might get a grid intensity of 0.4 per kilowatt hour. Overnight, when it's mainly wind providing it, that's down to 0.02. So the main thing for us is to try and get that grid intensity down. And one way of doing that is by reducing demand. Likewise with cars. I mean, cars have a few factors here. One is obviously how much pollution is produced in producing the petrol or the diesel that's going into your car process. So you've still got that on-running industrial cost that you're thinking about as if I scrap my car. But you've also got the pollution issue, you know, the carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, particulate matter that's coming out of the exhaust pipe. So I think the right thing to do, yes, it's not as clear as my presentation might give it, but it's still always the right thing to do, is to make that forward step.
Lovely answer. I hope that answers that question, Paul. Julian, sorry, I jumped from you. I didn't know if you left a question out there hanging, or whether we'd answered it. You said some lovely things about our speak. Did you have a question? Was it answered?
Not really. I was just making a few points about the necessity to upgrade housing, and but I will take up a point with Toby. Of course, the thing is that when we get more green vehicles on the grid, their batteries become a storage system. In fact, there's a state, where is it? Virginia in the USA. Their utility company has bought a load of electric buses, and the idea is that which will be school buses, but then they'll go back to the depot, and then they will in effect become a giant battery storage system. So I think that's a wonderful example of innovative thinking. So you're not having a battery storage system standing alone there. Okay.
And just to say that that's happening here as well. So not exactly the same example, but Octopus have an EV charging tariff now. So you'll get really cheap overnights when there's lots of wind available, and sometimes negative overnights. So they pay you to charge your car. And the tariff is built around that factor. So it's a bit like an economy 7 type thing, but specifically for EV chargers. And then they will ask you to release power at certain times in peak periods.
Cool.
Thank you, Toby. Tom Payton, you've asked if you can ask a question.
Thanks very much, Steve. I'd like to echo comments about the excellence of the speakers as well, and just wanted to follow up on a point that Sarah was making about small organisations, because I represent a very small organisation called Young Mums Support Network, and we operate out of, or did before COVID, out of a schoolhouse in Wandsworth at Griffin Primary School. And there we teach classes on sewing. So that results in sort of upgrading clothes, upgrading household things like making curtains, repurposing clothes, that sort of stuff. We have a garden which we've used to produce vegetables for the local community, and we teach cooking and help mums to learn how to cook healthy, nutritional meals using the vegetables from the gardens, and also taking what is surplus requirement to some of the supermarkets locally through an organisation called Fair Share to reduce waste there. I don't really have a question, but I have a comment which I'd like to make to Aled, which is that we have an application in for a grant from Wandsworth Council due on the 25th of November to help us support the garden, and anything you can do to help that along would be gratefully appreciated. Thank you.
Over to you, Aled.
Yeah, please send it through, Tom. I'll just send you my email. I'll stick my email in the chat.
Thank you very much.
Please send me through. I'm delighted to look into that.
Thank you.
Lovely. At this point, I'd ask Andrew Hagar from Wandsworth Council to just come in. Andrew's responsible for putting together this climate summit. And we've had a question from Natalie Bennett. And Natalie, I'm going to ask you to unmute as well, just in case you want to add to that question. Andrew.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what you mean, Natalie, by the greening framework for businesses. I think there's something that Steve mentioned, working with Toby around developing sort of a green mark, and that's certainly something that we'd be very interested in supporting and following. I think that seems like a very, very good idea. In terms of what we're trying to do, we're just trying to support businesses as best we can, and hoping that people sort of join in with us, sort of coming from the session and do more to think about actually what action you can take. But Natalie, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
I think it was the green mark that was what I had in mind. Excuse me. And just wondering what that meant. I interpret that to mean that it was some kind of guideline or framework to help businesses know what direction to take and to understand when they're achieving. And perhaps that would be something that also locally would be a recognized achievement stamp of approval, so people know what businesses they're dealing with and can kind of maybe make more informed choices more quickly by these things being more widely shared, is how I interpret that little snippet of information that was shared. So I just wanted to know more about it.
Oh, sorry, Natalie. I thought you were talking about high-level strategic. You're talking about the stuff that Toby and I were talking about, where we're sort of, looking to develop a local green kite mark based on, what businesses are looking at, what they're starting to do, and how far they can go with it. So that's something in the planning. But yes, hopefully out of these sessions, we'll get more involved and start to develop along those lines. But thank you very much for the question. So I think we're probably overshooting the amount of time we had for this session. I think the speakers have all been great and the questions have been great. I'd just like to go around to our speakers, Alid, Toby and Steve, just to ask for any final remarks. So Alid, over to you.
So thanks everyone for a really great discussion this morning. I mean, so many great ideas. I mean, where to begin? I'm just going to pick one absolutely random. It's actually not really a climate change one at all, but Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, I've always thought is an amazing idea. Keen observers of the scientific press will have noticed that Dolly Parton part-funded one of the successful stage 3 COVID vaccines. So as well as, building Dolly World, which employs half her family, I mean, she is just incredible. But enough about Dolly Parton. I think a great idea that you and I, Steve, can perhaps take offline is thinking about how we can build on Sarah's idea about having a forum for businesses to exchange and discuss green ideas. I think that's a really, really good thing, and something perhaps we can facilitate and put our heads together and see what we can do.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd love to work on that with you. Toby, any final remarks?
Well, just on that point, we've just launched a group page on Facebook, which is called Southwest London Climate Action Crew. Not the greatest name, I have to say, but the idea of it is that anyone can go up there and post ideas and what's happening, what events are going on. And it's getting traction now. So I think we only launched it a week ago and we got 63 members, and there seems to be stuff going up there every day. So initially that might be a forum that people can use while something else is being developed. So I think that would be good. And then just in terms of the presentation I gave, and what I'd like to say is any small measure you can afford to do within your business is a step in the right direction. So, don't feel that, well, if I can't do all these things, I don't do anything. Just take the first step. It could be a few LED light bulbs. It could be a smart thermostat. And equally, if you need some help and advice, we're here to help with that. That's what we do in the borough. So give us a call. My contact details will be on the presentation, so you can drop us an email and we can see how we can help.
Thank you very much for that, Toby. Steve, can I ask you to unmute yourself and just contribute final remarks?
My final remarks were, I hope I wasn't patronizing. It was just about our story and my contact details. Hopefully, Steve, you'll share them. If anybody does want to ask any questions, anybody wants to understand what we're doing and thinks I could help, we're patron members of the Chamber. We we want to be part of Wandsworth. We're trying to do some good, and I would be very happy to have conversations with anybody if they feel that I can give them any guidance at all, and share our black book of knowledge and our contact details if we can. Very happy to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. You certainly weren't patronizing. Inspiring is the word that I'd use. So I'd like to thank all of our speakers for just sharing their time and sharing their experiences. To Andrew and his team for putting together Wandsworth Climate Change Summit. I think it's been a huge success and will lead to many developments. Things that I'd like to see come out from it as, you know, how do businesses get more involved? What are the routes for that to happen? How we can develop this concept where, you know, we are talking about climate change to our customers and our suppliers, just to keep that conversation alive and to see what falls out of that. How we can encourage our supply chains to just be green, really. You know, you've got the choice as much as anyone else to work with people who are green. And it came out from what Steve True was saying, really. It's, you know, companies are about people. And if you engage with your people, then they become part of the culture of the company. And there's an opportunity to engage on the green agenda as well, because if we can spread the green love amongst our people, then it almost starts to go viral. You know, if they can talk to their friends about it and their contacts, then you've got a ready-made route to get the message out there. I think I've got a fear of becoming evangelical about this, but I think you know, at the heart of it, we all want the planet to be the best that it can be, and to realize just how much our little small efforts can make would be a huge step. So thank you all very much for attending this event. I really am passionate about this, and I will circulate the recording as soon as I can. So with that, I'm going to close this event, but I look forward to the summit next year. Thank you very much.